will you hear people say it was instead of it were when they're giving the hypothetical using the subjunctive mood? That's a long sentence. The answer is yes, sometimes. I wish they wouldn't. They deserve a smack. When I first started teaching English, I was at a training center, and I had just started. The owner of the training center came into one of my classes and asked me a question that I did not know how to answer. I don't think he knew the answer. He was just trying to test me. He said, "Can you explain the subjunctive mood?" He had probably looked up on the internet, what's the most difficult thing to explain for English teachers? It's not easy to explain. That was a terrifying moment. I was very inexperienced. It was many, many years ago. And I experienced a few of those terrifying moments as a teacher when I first started because as a native speaker, you know how to use the language naturally and correctly, but you don't necessarily know how to explain the language. What are things called? What is the subjunctive mood? Well, that's what we're going to talk about. But I think it's important to notice that, right? There is a difference between knowing how to use and knowing how to explain, or knowing the names of things. When it comes to grammar, if you're going to focus on one or the other, I would strongly encourage you to do it the way that most native English speakers do it. Focus on being able to use it correctly, and whatever it's called, not as important. So, we're going to talk about how to use the subjunctive mood. I'm going to be using some grammary words. Don't get too caught up on those, okay? We're going to try to understand this by example, because that is the way that any native English speaker knows how to use their language and the grammar of their language, right? Okay, so let's hop over here to the blackboard, and we're going to be looking at the subjunctive mood. Now, again, completely unimportant why this is called the subjunctive mood. Anytime you're talking about moods, it's kind of about the intention of the sentence, the way that verbs are used to give a sentence a certain purpose or intention. Not super important, okay? The key thing, I think, to understand is when we're doing this, we're usually talking about a command, a request, a demand, asking something of someone, right? And perhaps a hypothetical. That means something that's not real, that we're just imagining. So with the subjunctive mood, we're kind of farther away from whatever we're talking about. And we mark that farther awayness with the way that we make it, the way that we structure it, and how we use the verbs. Now, I think all of this is probably still not making much sense. Okay, fair enough. Let's try to get a sense for this with a simple example, okay? I'm going to put an example up, and I'm going to explain what's going on with it. Okay. She wait. I suggested she wait a week. Now, you might look at this and say, wait a second. I know that verbs need to agree with their subjects. So if I use the verb wait, then I know it should be I wait, you wait, but it should be he waits and she waits. Absolutely right. That's right. We need to usually change the verb to agree with the subject. But that would be if all you're doing is saying, she waits 10 minutes for the bus, right? You're just describing what's going on. It's a simple description. You're not trying to do anything else. Just describing how long she usually waits for the bus. She waits for 10 minutes. Correct. But with this sentence, it's not a simple description. It's doing something more. It's giving a suggestion. It's giving a command, demanding something, asking something, giving a hypothetical, just imagining. So it's not a simple description. When we're doing this kind of thing, especially when we use verbs like suggest, ask, demand, we will follow that with a simple version of the verb, or the simple tense of the verb without any changes for agreement, right? Without any changes to make it agree with he or she or it or anything, right? So if this were in the past, it would be she waited a week. But because it's after suggested here, and we're making a suggestion, I suggested she wait. I suggested she do that, right? If it's just she and do in a normal sentence, then it would be does. She does, right? O-E-S. She does. Okay, yeah, that's right, right? What about be? I suggested she be patient. Well, if this is a normal sentence, then this should be she is patient, but it's not. Again, I suggested she be. I suggested she wait. I suggested she go, right? Instead of goes, because of this thing. We're giving the demand. We're talking about this thing without focusing on time, when it happens usually, and kind of pushing it away from the immediate thing, right? And again, that's a little confusing, I know, but I think once we get into a couple more examples, it will be more clear. Now, before we do that, just one thing very quickly. So as I said, after specific words like demand, like ask, like suggest, like wish, but also were. And that's probably the most common way to use it. When we make a hypothetical using were and would, right? You might have noticed that it doesn't always agree with the subject, and that might have been confusing for you, right? If I were a dentist, I would. Okay. Now you might think again, okay, well, hold on. I know that I has to agree with, or this one should agree with I, which would be was, right? Yeah, that's usually correct. Okay, but again, we're pushing it away a little bit. We're speaking hypothetically. And so, once again, it should be were to let everyone know, hey, this is subjunctive mood. Hey, this is hypothetical. So this is almost a way to mark it. And it's the same thing with be. I gave the example of be. I suggested she be patient. Doesn't agree. Yes, that's true, but I'm marking it. I'm letting people know that this was a suggestion that I gave to her, and that not agreeing of be in its simple form is a little marker. So the were and the be, right, and the not agreeing in general after words like demand, ask, suggest, and wish, these are ways to tell you, hey, this is subjunctive mood. Now, that is not to say every time you see the word were that it's subjunctive mood. For example, we were sleepy. Not subjunctive mood. That's just telling me something that happened in the past. It's not just something that happened in the past. It is a hypothetical. Okay? Okay. Now, I think, again, the best thing to do here is just study some examples. So let's get into a few examples, and I think you'll really get it. Even if you haven't understood it so far? Again, this is not easy stuff. This is complicated stuff. Okay, so here we're starting with the hypotheticals, which means not real things that we're kind of imagining. Okay, hypotheticals. Not real thing that we're imagining. Okay, if he were older, he might sign up. Is he older? No, he's not. It's imaginary. It's not real. I'm just wondering. I'm just imagining that. If he were. Now, will you sometimes hear people use was instead of were to talk about hypothetical things? Yes, yes. Generally, though, it is recommended that when you want to let people know, hey, it's hypothetical, you use were. It's kind of a marker. You will hear people sometimes say, if he was older, he might sign up. But it's recommended that you use were for these. If it were summer, we could jump in. Is it summer? No, it's kind of at a distance. We're just imagining it. It's not really summer. We're just thinking about it, right? If it is summer and we are jumping in, that's totally different. It's not subjunctive mood. It's not hypothetical. It's real. Here we are in the summer jumping in, right? But if it were summer, we are maybe walking by a swimming pool. Oh, looks nice. If it were summer, we could jump in. It's not summer. Okay, hypothetical, it were. Because normally it would be, again, it was. Will you hear people say it was instead of it were when they're giving the hypothetical using the subjunctive mood? That's a long sentence. The answer is yes, sometimes. I wish they wouldn't. They deserve a smack. Okay. I wish it were summer. Again, is it summer? No, it's not. It's hypothetical. And the were tells me, hey, subjunctive mood. This is not changing. It is a hypothetical. Okay, right? So that's one way we use it. Now we need to explore the other type. And again, people will say, I wish it was summer. It happens. People do say it, okay? They recommended I wash my hands every 30 minutes. Okay. Now, the thing that might be confusing about this is wash does agree with I, right? And we would be wash too. But if we changed this to, let's say, she, and we want to agree the word wash with she, then we would say what? She washes. She washes her hands every 30 minutes. If we just said that, she washes her hands every 30 minutes, that's a simple sentence describing the thing that she's doing. Okay, but what we want to do using the subjunctive mood is to let everybody reading this sentence know, hey, we are not just simply describing something. We're using this sentence to give a command or say that we gave a command or a wish or something like that. Something that we want to be true, right? To ask something, for example. So they recommended I wash would be the same if it were she. If it were she, They recommended she wash would be no different. It would stay as wash and wouldn't be washes. They recommended I wash my hands every 30 minutes. So even though this actually does agree with I, it's still the subjunctive mood. It just happens to be I. And if it were she, then it would still be wash and wouldn't be washes. Okay. Right. Okay, so how about this one? I only ask that you take this seriously. Again, we're asking something in this sentence, right? The purpose of this sentence is to state my request. I only ask that you take. Again, take happens to agree, but if we change this to she, then it would also be take. So it doesn't matter if it agrees or not, actually. It's about the basic structure. I only ask that you go. I only ask that you take. I only ask that she go. I only ask that she take. Okay. It's important that you be well prepared for any question. You be, again, what agrees with you? You are, right? That's the normal. Are is the normal way to agree with you. This is be because we are stating, right, that this person, if they want this to be true, should do this or be this, right? It's distancing it from, and often this follows, by the way, adjectives. In this case, if we use be, it often follows adjectives. We're giving this sense of stating a thing that's true kind of outside of time without a simple description of what's happening, right? Using the you be as a kind of thing that's attached to this, right? So again, the explanation, it's complicated. It's not very simple, but with the examples, we can get an idea for it. And again, the markers are things that tell you, hey, this is subjunctive mood. Pay also attention to specific words like announce, demand, command, ask, wish. These words are very common when we're doing this type, right? And if you want to kind of test it to see if it sounds right, use he or she instead of I to give you a sense of whether or not you're using it correctly. Again, it should not change based on which subject that we're talking about or which word we are using here. Hopefully it makes sense. If you have any questions about this, how to use it, let me know. The best way to do this, I think, is to practice, make your own examples to see if you've got it. Feel free to share your examples with me. I'd love to take a look. And if you have any other questions, leave a comment. Don't forget also to hit the like button, subscribe, and check out my full courses in the links in the description.